Hey there, amazing INFJs and INFPs in the healing group. It's great to be here with you today. If you don't know me, my name is Maria, and I am the main admin of the INFJ INFP healing group. It's great to be here with you today, and we're going to do a little bit of Q&As. Some of you have been asking me questions, or I've seen an amazing or a couple of amazing questions on the forum, and I haven't had a chance to get back to it, writing, typing. Some of you know that I have dyslexia, so writing or reading is generally a challenging task for me. So doing a video is so much easier, and so thank you for your interest in doing this in a video format. And thank you so much for making it a little bit easier for me to support your personal development journey. So let's get into the questions. The first question is from Tedra. I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. And the question is, hey everyone, just wanted to pose a question here related to something that I'm working on in my healing journey. Has anyone had to door slam a family member or seriously consider severing ties with your family or on behalf of emotional sanity and future health? Overall, I know beyond knowing that this is the best thing for me and makes the most sense, but I have recently realized that I have a self-doubting habit, and that is delaying my external actions a bit in this case. Any similar experiences here? Just wondering if anyone can relate to the struggle of weighing the pros and cons or ruminating on the implications before finally making the decision to drop the hammer down. And if so, how was your life, your day-to-day experience after you finally did this? So Tedra, this is a great question. And I really want to say that, it's a very brave thing to start setting boundaries. And to have to set boundaries that are this extreme, because the door slam is an extreme form of boundary setting. It is very important to understand that, setting boundaries in that way, in the closing of the door way or the door slam way, should kind of be like a final resource. If you've tried everything else to set boundaries, to reiterate boundaries, to reestablish boundaries, to follow through with your boundaries, if you've tried everything else and you've communicated with the person that you're wanting to door slam in your family, then they will know what's coming, so that it's not that you just don't have good boundaries and you just take the punishment, and then because you're so exhausted then you have to slam the door, which is really understandable reaction in that space. So you are asking, has anyone had to door slam a family member? I have actually had to door slam a family member, and this was my father was a narcissistic alcoholic, and I remember going to therapy. I went to therapy for over 10 years when I was living in Ireland, and I had 3 different therapists, and for different reasons, because one had a child and the other one retired from the work, and then I had the third one. And so I was I was working with 3 different therapists over a 10-year period, and it was really interesting because the therapists didn't continue from each other's notes. So I went almost with a fresh start to each one of those therapists, and I worked with them for years. So I had a really nicely established relationship with these therapists, but I went to these therapists anyhow, and I wanted to hear what they had to say about my situation. So all I did was explain what the situation was, how it felt, what my experience of my childhood was, and then let them help their, in a way that they feel is the best. Because I didn't want to affect what they might suggest that I do, because I was so open to healing what I felt like needed to be healed there. So I was explaining to these 3 different people, the behavior of my father and my experience as a child. And each one of those therapists, independently from each other, because they didn't have each other's client notes or anything like that, they all kind of came to the same conclusion, or their observations and feedback was the same, which was, you seem to have a narcissistic parental wound. So whether your father was a narcissist or was just narcissistic, that it caused you to have this wound, it doesn't really matter because the end result is the same. You're treated like you're a side character in somebody else's journey, and you're not your own person. So they all came to that conclusion, or said that to me, or asked, do you know what a narcissist is? Said the first therapist. And the second one said, it sounds to me like there's narcissistic wounding. And the third one said, it sounded like your father was a narcissist. So they all said the same things. Now, whether my father was a narcissist or wasn't a narcissist, we don't actually know because he never went to get help. But as I said, the wounding, the narcissistic parental wounding is there, whether he was a person with a personality disorder or whether it was just narcissistic behavior. So in either one of those cases, I started talking about this, as some of you know my work. I've been working in this field for quite some time, and I started talking about my experiences with my father and the narcissistic parental wound, because I've always felt like if I talk about something that's been a real serious situation for me, that maybe then somebody else can get some help from it and won't feel so alone with the pain. And so I started talking about it, and one of my aunts, my father's twin sister, contacted me and said, your father wasn't a narcissist, why are you lying to these people, and all this kind of thing. And I just said to her, listen, I've gone to 3 different therapists about this who all have suggested to me that I have a narcissistic parental wound. Now, whether it's coming from, whether the person was a narcissist or was just narcissistic in their behavior, that the effect is still the same to the child, and this is what professionals in this field have told me, and 3 out of 3. So, and she got really upset about it. She contacted all of my relatives all around the world to tell them that I'm lying about my father, which, for me it would have been easier to not talk about my father at all than to talk about it, put myself into a vulnerable position, and then possibly get the wrath of my family about it. I mean, it would have been so much easier to just not have that conversation at all, not share any of that vulnerable, tender stuff about my childhood. And so I felt extremely violated by her reaction, because I started to get messages from people all around the world that I've never even met, that are like third cousins or, second cousins or second aunts or whatever, like really kind of distant relatives, that are sending me messages saying, hey, I don't know if you're aware, but your aunt is contacting me and telling me about this stuff, and I don't want you to feel bad, but I just want you to know that I believe you. I believe you know what your childhood was like, as opposed to your aunt who didn't live with you, and I just want to say you have my full support. So I got a lot of support from people who actually had a lot to do with my father, and a lot of support from people who had never even met my father, all around the world. Because I wasn't the unreasonable person, and I wasn't doing it to try and get even or any of that. Because remember, I'd already gone to therapy for so long, I'd already done a lot of parenting work around this issue, that I didn't need my father to change. I have a happy life. I don't need to. I don't regret anything. I've healed so much with this wounding and turned it around, turned those wounds into superpowers, that I don't need anything to change. I don't need to make my father look bad. I just wanted to talk about the topic in case it would help somebody else who's in that space that was so painful for me when I was there. So I said to my aunt, I sent her a message and say, hey, I'm hearing back from people that I've never even met, that you're talking about me as if I'm lying, and I want you to know that if you want to have a relationship with me, I want you to apologize to me about contacting these people and spreading lies about me when you're not even interested in what my experience was as a child, and instead you're just deciding that it wasn't my experience, which is exactly the kind of gaslighting that I grew up with my father. So I want you to stop behaving like my father, and I want you to apologize to me if you want to continue to have a relationship with me. Now, my father passed away years ago, like I was like 20, so like 15, 20 years ago he passed away. So it's not even that there's a current relationship that my aunt can have with my father, that she has to choose between my father and myself. I'm out of the two of us, I'm the only person who's still alive, so she could have a relationship with me and you know, apologize and try and build the trust again. But her response was, you know, I have nothing to apologize, and you're wrong. And I just said to her, look, I'm going to discontinue having a relationship with you if you're behaving towards me like this. And I'm happy to open that relationship when you're ready to apologize to your behavior, your actions towards me, and not even checking in with me what the experience was and how it is, you know, how it is that we've come to this junction. And she just said, I have nothing to apologize to, and I just cut all contact with her. But as you can see, like, it took quite a lot of communication between the feeling of being violated by this person and then finally closing the door on them. And I gave her every chance to see things from my perspective, or even just have a conversation, because it's okay to disagree. Like, it's okay to disagree with a person, because everybody has a subjective experience of things. So it's completely okay to disagree with the experience and still love the person and still want what's right for them. But she couldn't get over the fact that she didn't want, in her reality, she didn't want to have this she did not want to have a reality where my father was abusive, not in a narcissistic way, where I had the narcissistic wound. And she couldn't handle it, and that's her prerogative. But at the same time, I don't want her to be in my life if that's how she is behaving towards me, if she's willing to do that kind of behavior and then expect me to be okay with it, because I had enough of that gaslighting when I was a child. I don't need it as an adult. So that's the kind of experience that I've personally had. And if you're on YouTube and you've seen a video of me explaining the INFJ door slam, now I want to say that video is directed to the development group, not the healing group. So if you're in a healing space, that video is going to get you back up, because it's very direct. Because in fact, what the INFJ door slam is, it's the INFJ inner 10-year-old, the inward-facing thinking function, making a final decision about a grown-up matter. And when you have challenges in setting boundaries, you eventually get so exhausted that the only reasonable thing to do is to close the door. You don't even feel like communicating about it anymore with the other person who's violating you, because you feel so violated. But I want to say that I do believe that every INFJ should at least slam a door on one person in their lives, and do it consciously, so that you recognize that you have the power to do that. And once you recognize that you have the power to do that, perhaps you don't then resort to it as the kind of always the go-to place in setting boundaries. So perhaps you start setting boundaries before it gets to that point where you're so exhausted that there's no other option than to slam the door. So I do think that this door slam, the INFJ door slam, has a positive in it, and it's a great learning experience. But at the same time, I don't think that it should be your main way of setting boundaries, because if it is, then that means that your life is very, very turbulent leading up to that. And if you don't learn, or if you haven't learned to set different kinds of boundaries before you hit that point, you will have already experienced so much abuse that your life will have been in an upheaval and really difficult. And personally, having learned to set boundaries, and I mean, I've written courses around that too. it's just made my life so much more calm and collected, and I feel like I can own my own life, if that makes sense. And setting boundaries, and even when people violate those boundaries, when you reiterate the boundaries and then talk to them that if you can't respect this boundary, then I won't be able to be in your life. That kind of an approach in boundary setting really sets you up really nicely in life, where you're able to put your energy into where you want to go proactively, rather than fighting all these different things and fighting with yourself and thinking about what happened and being consumed by how somebody treated you and those kinds of things, because that's so tough. That is so tough. But unfortunately, when we're in that healing space, when there's a lot of trauma, we feel like there's no other way, that we don't have the strength to set those boundaries in any other way. And I get that. I understand that. I have door slammed people in the past, not consciously, and thought that it was a good thing. And it was at the time, because I needed to do that because the relationships were abusive. So to answer your question, I hope that kind of explains some things for you in this relation. So you were asking if other people had these kinds of experiences, and that those have been kind of my experiences. And you were wondering if anyone can relate to this struggle of weighing the pros and cons or ruminating the implications before finally making a decision to drop the hammer. I kind of feel like if you are able to set boundaries before you hit the point, then there's a possibility of reconciliation there. But also, it takes away you doubting yourself, because you've been communicating with that person about that decision. So you will have given them a lot of kind of warning, plenty of time to adjust their behavior. And then if they still don't adjust the behavior, and if they still continue to violate your boundaries and behave in an abusive way towards you, then making the decision to close the door is not going to be that difficult. Then you just know, hey, it is in fact the right thing here to do, because I have tried everything I can to make this work. So you were also saying how was your life, your day-to-day experience after you finally did it. So when I did the door slam with my the conscious door slam with my aunt, it really made me feel like I had reclaimed a part of myself that was always at the mercy of the other people's abuse and gaslighting. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit emotional here, because it felt that reclaiming of that part of yourself just felt like those tender little inner children could finally come home to me, not be at the mercy of people who only saw me as a prop or as a part of their story. So that's how it felt for me. So I just want to say to you, Tedra, please reach out if you need more support around this. Happy to see what we can do. And also, if you feel like you're good to take it from here, I'm going to say good luck with this, because this is a challenging thing. But please know that we're rooting for you.